The moment I stepped into the living room that night, I knew Id made a mistake. It was late past midnight, and Ed only gotten out of bed because my throat felt like sandpaper. I didn't expect anyone to be awake, certainly not my husband Robert, who was away on one of his perpetual business trips, and definitely not my stepson Liam, who usually stayed holed up in his room until the sun was practically overhead. But there he was, sitting on the couch, silhouetted by the soft glow of the floor lamp. I froze, not just because he startled me, but because of the way he was looking. His eyes, dark and intense, were locked on mine. And then I understood why. My nightgown. It was thin, almost transparent under that light, clinging to me in a way that felt exposed. More exposed than I'd intended, or frankly ever allowed myself to be. Liam? I managed my voice barely a whisper, much softer than I'd meant it. He didn't reply, his gaze drifting over me, slowly making my stomach clench. Not with fear exactly, but with something else, something dangerous. I instinctively pulled the neckline of my gown tighter, a futile gesture. It was too late. The look in his eyes said everything. I turned quickly, muttering something about needing water, my hand shaking as I reached for a glass on the counter. His presence in the room felt heavy, unspoken, a tangible weight in the air. When I glanced back, he was still watching, his expression unreadable, yet sharp enough to steal the air from my lungs. That was the moment everything shifted. I guess I should back up. Explain how I, Catherine, a woman in my late 40s, ended up feeling completely undone by a look from my stepson. My name feels ordinary, a stark contrast to the complicated mess my life had become. I married Robert 10 years ago. Second time around, after my first marriage imploded, leaving me with nothing but debt and a mountain of heartache. Offered stability. He was reliable, successful, a man who knew how to build an empire. What he didn't offer, not really, was intimacy or warmth. Our marriage settled into a comfortable partnership devoid of passion. Robert traveled constantly, leaving me rattling around in this huge house. It was filled with expensive things, but it felt empty. I tried filling the void, gardening, volunteering, endless redecorating projects, but it all felt like going through the motions. I'd become a ghost in my own life, blending into the expensive wallpaper unnoticed. Until Liam came home. He's 24 now, fresh out of college, staying for the summer to figure things out. I'd known him since he was a quiet, polite teenager, always a bit reserved. But the Liam who came back this summer was different. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, and his eyes held a new intensity. He'd grown up undeniably. And for the first time, I couldn't ignore him. I told myself it was harmless curiosity, a fleeting thought. But that night, catching his gaze felt seismic. I went back to bed, but sleep was impossible. I replayed the scene, the dim light, his unwavering stare, the sudden awareness of my body under the thin fabric, a flush of heat I hadn't felt in years. I told myself it was just a look, a moment of awkwardness. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. That night was the starting gun, the beginning of something I couldn't name, something terrifyingly exhilarating that I wasn't ready to face. Because when I woke up the next morning, the memory of Liam's stare wasn't something I wanted to forget. It was something I wanted to feel again. The day after that night felt different, sharper. I was acutely aware of Liam's presence in a way I hadn't been before. The sound of his footsteps upstairs, the low rumble of his voice on the phone, even the faint scent of his cologne drifting from his room, it was all amplified. I tried to bury myself in chores, scrubbing the kitchen counters, like a woman possessed, reorganizing the pantry, as if cleaning could somehow erase the memory of his gaze. By dinner time, I was a nervous wreck. Robert was still away, leaving just Liam and me at the large dining table. I avoided his eyes fixated on my plate of roasted chicken, as if it held the secrets of the universe. "You've been quiet today, Catherine," Liam said, finally breaking the tense silence. I flinched, looking up, startled. His tone was casual, almost lazy, but the weight of his gaze was anything but. Just tired, I lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle. You sure that's all it is? The question hung in the air, pointed. I felt a blush creep up my neck and quickly looked away, pretending to need a refill of water. You know, he continued, his voice dropping lower, about last night. My hand froze on the water pitcher. What about last night? I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he said, leaning back in his chair, watching me. It's just, I wasn't expecting to see you like that. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Liam, it's fine. Let's just forget about it. Can you? He asked, his voice a low challenge. I couldn't answer. Instead, I stood abruptly, clutching my plate like a shield. I'm just going to clean up. I heard his chair scrape back as he stood and followed me into the kitchen. Catherine, he said, his voice closer now. I turned to face him, my body rigid. Liam, stop. He paused, his expression unreadable, then gave a slow nod, taking a small step back. Okay, stop, for now. The way he said it, soft but utterly certain, sent a tremor through me. The following days were a delicate dance. Liam didn't push, but he didn't retreat either. He was just there, always at the edges of my awareness, watching, waiting. Every casual encounter felt charged, a brush of hands, reaching for the same coffee mug, a lingering glance across the room, the way his voice would drop whenever he spoke to me directly. I tried to maintain distance to be the stepmother, but it felt increasingly impossible. Liam had somehow become the magnetic center of my world, my heart giving an unwelcome leap whenever I heard his footsteps on the stairs. Then, one evening, a fierce thunderstorm rolled in, plunging the house into darkness. Robert was still in New York, and the place felt vast and empty around me. As rain lashed against the windows, I lit candles in the living room. Their flickering light did little to dispel the tension crackling between Liam and me. You okay? He asked, stepping into the room. I'm fine, I said, setting a candle on the coffee table. He sat on the couch, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, tracking my every move. You don't seem fine, I sighed, sinking onto the armchair across from him. It's just the storm. Makes the house feel lonely. You don't have to be lonely, he said, his voice barely audible above the storm's roar. My breath hitched. I forced a brittle laugh, trying to dismiss it. You've been reading too many of those dramatic novels, haven't you? He didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Catherine, we both know what this is. My heart pounded. What are you talking about? This, he said, gesturing between us. I see the way you look at me, and I know you've noticed the way I look at you. I'm not a kid anymore. I shot to my feet. This conversation is over. I turned to leave, but his hand shot out, gently circling my wrist. The contact was electric, a jolt that went straight to my core. Catherine, he murmured, his eyes locking on mine. Don't walk away. For a timeless moment, I was frozen, pulled in opposite directions, by every instinct screaming at me to run, and an undeniable current holding me captive. Please, he whispered, his voice cracking, just slightly, betraying a sliver of vulnerability beneath his boldness. That was it. That was what broke me. I sank back into the chair, my heart hammering as he released my wrist. The air between us was thick, charged with something I couldn't name, something terrifyingly exhilarating that I knew was deeply wrong, yet utterly compelling. This is dangerous, I whispered. Sometimes danger is worth it, he replied, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. The first time felt tentative, a collision of pent-up longing and years of restraint, neither of us able to pull back any longer. It happened in the flickering candlelight, the storm outside a furious soundtrack to the quiet sounds of our breathing. When it was over, I lay in his arms, staring at the shifting shadows on the ceiling. "This can't happen again," I said, my voice trembling. "Why not?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. "Because it's wrong," I said, pulling away, reaching for my robe. "Oh, because of Robert?" he interrupted, sitting up, his eyes challenging mine. "He doesn't deserve you. He doesn't even see you, Catherine." "But I do." His words sliced through me, raw and cutting. For a moment, I couldn't form a response. I need time. I finally managed standing and pulling the robe tightly around me. He nodded, his gaze intense, holding mine. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." But time didn't make it easier. It made it harder. The tension between us intensified, bleeding into every shared moment, a brief touch in the kitchen, a silent conversation across the dinner table when Robert was home, the way Liam's voice would drop whenever he spoke to me directly. I tried to maintain distance to be the stepmother, but it felt increasingly impossible. Leah, M, had somehow become the magnetic center of my world, my heart giving an unwelcome leap whenever I heard his footsteps on the stairs. Then, one evening, Robert called. "I'll be home tomorrow," he said, his voice brisk. "Been gone too long." A wave of panic washed over me. Robert's return would be a cold shower on the fragile secret world Liam and I had built, forcing us back into the suffocating roles we were supposed to play. After I hung up, I found Liam in the garden, his hands in the soil, tending to the flowers I'd planted months ago. "He's coming back?" I said, my voice tight with anxiety. Liam looked up, his expression unreadable in the twilight. "Okay, so what do we do?" I whispered. "We don't have to stop Catherine," he said, standing and brushing the dirt from his hands as he stepped closer. "We just have to be careful." "Careful," I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "Liam, this is insane. We're going to get caught." "Then let us get caught," he said, his tone suddenly defiant. I stared at him, stunned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm tired of pretending," he said, his eyes holding mine. "I'm tired of hiding. I don't care what anyone thinks." "But I do," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "I can't lose everything, Liam. I can't lose you." He cupped my face gently, his gaze fierce. "You're not going to lose me. Ever." His words were a promise, but they also felt like a warning. That night, I lay awake for hours. Robert's impending return loomed a dark cloud. Liam's words echoed, "We don't have to stop. We just have to be careful." But I knew with a chilling certainty that careful wouldn't be enough. The storm we'd invited was already too powerful, and it felt inevitable that it would consume us both. Robert returned the next afternoon, bringing his usual air of quiet authority that seemed to shrink the vast house around him. He greeted me with a brief kiss on the cheek, his attention already on his phone, and gave Liam a curt nod. "Good to have you back," I said, forcing a smile as I took his briefcase. He glanced at me, then his brow furrowing slightly. "You look tired. Not sleeping well?" "I'm fine," I said quickly, turning away before he could see the blush rising on my neck. Liam said nothing, his eyes fixed on Robert with a calm that betrayed none of the turmoil that had consumed us in Robert's absence. That evening, I found myself at the kitchen sink, rinsing dishes while Robert worked in his study. Liam came in quietly, his presence a sudden magnetic pull I couldn't ignore. "You're going to break that plate," he said softly, gesturing to the one I was gripping with white knuckles. I set it down, my hands trembling. "You need to stop," I whispered, not daring to look at him. "Stop what?" he asked, stepping closer. "This. The way you look at me, the way you linger," I said, finally turning to face him. Liam tilted his head, his eyes locking onto mine. "Do you want me to stop, Catherine?" My breath hitched. I couldn't answer. His hand brushed mine as he reached for a towel, a simple touch that sent a familiar jolt through me. You don't have to keep pretending, he murmured. Not with me. Liam, we can't keep doing this, I said, my voice trembling. But we are, he said, his voice steady, unwavering. And we will. I stepped back, putting distance between us, just as footsteps sounded in the hall. Robert appeared in the doorway, his gaze flickering between us, a curious expression on his face. Everything okay in here? He asked, his tone casual but sharp. Fine, I said quickly, my voice too high. Liam nodded, his face a perfect mask of calm. Just helping Catherine with the dishes. Robert lingered for a moment, his eyes assessing us, before finally retreating back to his study. The tension in the house became unbearable in the days that followed. Robert's presence was a constant, suffocating reminder of the line Liam and I had crossed. But it also made every stolen glance, every whispered word, every brief accidental touch between us all the more thrilling, all the more dangerous. One evening, Robert announced he'd invited an old friend over for dinner. Frank Carter, he said, pouring himself a scotch. You remember him, don't you, Catherine? I nodded, though the name sent a ripple of unease through me. Frank was a sharp man, an investigator by trade, observant in a way that made my skin crawl. When he arrived, his handshake was firm, his smile polite, but his eyes missed nothing. As we sat down to dinner, I felt his gaze on me more than once, lingering just a moment too long. Quite the place, Robert, Frank said, looking around the dining room. Always had a taste for the finer things. Robert chuckled. Helps to have a wife who knows how to make a house feel like a home. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting as Frank's gaze shifted to Liam. And you, he said, leaning back in his chair. What's the plan, Liam? Following in your father's footsteps? Liam shrugged, his tone measured, still figuring things out. Frank's smile didn't reach his eyes. Smart. No need to rush anything. The rest of the evening passed without incident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Frank was watching, analyzing, putting pieces together with a precision that made my skin prickle. That night, I found Liam waiting for me in the garden, his figure barely visible in the moonlight. He knows something, I said, wrapping my arms around myself, shivering despite the mild air. Frank? Liam asked, his tone calm. I nodded. I can feel it. The way he looks at us. Like he's connecting the dots. Let him, Liam said, stepping closer. He doesn't have anything on us, but what if he finds something? I whispered, my voice trembling. Well, deal with it. Together, Liam said, reaching out and brushing his fingers against my cheek. The following day, things took an unexpected turn. I was in the study sorting through a stack of mail when I found an envelope addressed to me in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper with a typed message. I know what you've been doing. Meet me at the diner on Main Street at 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone. My hands shook as I reread the note. There was no signature, but I didn't need one to know who had sent it. Someone had seen us. Catherine? Everything okay? Robert's voice startled me. I quickly folded the note, shoving it deep into my pocket. Nothing, I said, forcing a bright smile. Just junk mail. That evening, I told Robert I was meeting a friend for coffee. He barely looked up from his laptop as I left, my heart hammering against my ribs as I drove to the diner. Jessica was waiting in a corner booth, a smirk playing on her lips as I slid into the seat across from her. Took you long enough? She said, stirring her coffee slowly. What do you want, Jessica? I asked, cutting straight to the point. Her smirk widened. Money, of course. Enough to make me forget everything I've seen. I clenched my STS under the table. You don't have any proof? Oh, I think I do. She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen. My blood ran cold as I saw the grainy photo Liam and me in the garden, his hand on my cheek. It wasn't perfectly clear, but it was enough. More than enough. Jessica, please, I said, my voice breaking. You don't have to do this. Oh, but I absolutely do, she said, her tone dripping with malice. Unless, of course, you suddenly figure out how to meet my price. 50 grand by the end of the week. I don't have that kind of money. I said, my mind scrambling desperately for an escape route. Then you'd better figure it out, she said, standing and slipping her phone back into her purse. Because if you don't, Robert will be the first to know. When I told Liam about the meeting, he was furious. She's bluffing, he said, pacing the living room like a caged animal. She has photos? Liam, I said, my voice trembling. And she's not bluffing. She's serious. Then we'll pay her, he said, stopping abruptly. With what? I asked. I don't have access to that kind of money, and neither do you. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. Then we'll find another way. Over the next few days, the tension in the house escalated. Robert seemed oblivious, lost in his work, but Frank Carter's presence felt like a storm cloud hanging over us. One afternoon, I overheard Frank and Robert talking in the study. Their voices were low, but I could make out fragments. Something's off about Liam, Frank said. I'd keep an eye on him if I were you. What are you getting at, Frank? Robert asked, his tone wary. Frank hesitated. Just a feeling. Call it professional intuition. That night, Liam came to my room. His expression was grim. We can't keep this up, he said. What do you mean? I asked, my heart sinking. This house, this situation. It's too dangerous, he said. We need to leave. Leave? I repeated, stunned. He nodded. Just you and me. We can go somewhere far away. Start over. Liam, that's insane, I whispered. We can't just disappear. What's insane is staying here pretending everything's fine when it's not, he said, his voice rising with desperation. I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. I can't just walk away, Liam. From Robert. From this life. Do you love him, Catherine? Liam interrupted, his tone sharp, cutting through my excuses. I froze. The silence stretched between us. That's what I thought, he said, his voice softening slightly. Catherine, I love you. And I can't stand the thought of losing you. His words were a key turning in a lock inside me. I pulled him into an embrace, clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a world gone mad. But even as I held him, a cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. A nagging voice whispered that this wasn't over. The storm was still coming, and when it hit, it would leave nothing unscathed. The following day, everything began to unravel faster than I could keep pace. Liam's desperate plea to leave echoed in my mind, but the idea of simply vanishing felt insurmountable. Robert remained seemingly oblivious, consumed by his business world, but Frank's watchful presence lingered, and Jessica's demands grew louder, more insistent. That morning, as I sat in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, Robert walked in looking unusually sharp in a tailored navy suit. I'll be out most of the day, he said, scrolling through emails on his phone. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Meeting downtown, he replied, glancing up briefly. Frank's coming with me. Something about tying up loose ends. Loose ends. The phrase sent a chill through me. What kind of loose ends? Robert shrugged dismissively. Nothing for you to worry about, just business. But as he gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and walked out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't telling me the whole truth. By mid-afternoon, my anxiety was a live wire. Liam was out probably trying to find a way to deal with Jessica, and I was alone in the house with only my spiraling thoughts for company. I paced the living room, my mind racing through possibilities. And then the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Jessica stood there, arms crossed, a smug expression on her face. You're late, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice trembling. The money, she replied, turning to face me. I told you I wanted it by today. I told you. Ooh, I don't have that kind of money, I said, trying desperately to sound firm. Well, that's unfortunate, she said, pulling out her phone, because Robert might be very interested in seeing these. She held up the screen, and there it was again, the grainy photo of Liam and me in the garden, clear enough to erase any shred of plausible deniability. "Jessica, please," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't have to do this." "Oh, but I absolutely do," she said, her tone dripping with malice. "Unless, of course, you suddenly figure out how to meet my price." Before I could even form a response, the front door opened and Liam walked in. He froze when he saw Jessica, his eyes narrowing instantly. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. "Just having a little chat with your stepmother," Jessica said, a nasty smirk playing on her lips. Liam stepped forward, his posture tense. "You need to leave." "Not until I get what I came for," she said, holding up her phone, flaunting the picture. Liam's gaze hardened. Before I could react, he lunged, snatching the phone from her hand. "Hey!" Jessica shouted, reaching for it, but Liam held it out of her reach, his face set. "This ends now," he said, his voice calm, chillingly controlled. "You think that's my only copy?" she sneered, recovering quickly. "If you so much as breathe a word of this to anyone," Liam said, his eyes fixed on hers, cold and steady, "I'll make sure you regret it." Jessica's eyes widened for a split second, taken aback, but then her smirk returned. "Big talk," she said, gathering her purse. "Let's see if you can back it up." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. "She's not going to stop," I said, my voice shaking. "She will," Liam said, his tone firm, putting the phone in his pocket. "I'll make sure of it." Later that night, I overheard Robert on the phone in his study. His voice was low, urgent. "Frank's getting too close," he said. "We need to handle this quietly. No loose ends." The phrase sent a shiver down my spine. I crept closer to the door, straining to hear. "If it comes to it," Robert continued, his voice dropping even lower, "we may need to cut ties entirely." "You know what I mean." My stomach twisted. He wasn't just talking about silencing Frank. He was talking about eliminating him. Or were the loose ends Frank was getting close to us? I found Liam in the garden later that night, pacing near the edge of the property. I told him everything I'd heard. "Robert's planning something." I said, my voice trembling as I recounted his words. "Something dangerous." Liam's expression darkened. "We need to stop him." "How?" I asked, my voice breaking. "He has all the power. He has the money, the connections. He doesn't have you." Liam said, his voice firm. "And that's what terrifies him?" The next morning, everything came crashing down. I woke to the sound of angry, raised voices coming from the study. Liam and Robert were arguing, their words muffled, but my heart hammered as I crept closer, staying out of sight in the hall. "You selfish, reckless bastard," Robert spat, his voice thick with rage. "You've jeopardized everything I've built, and you're a liar and a coward." Liam shot back, his voice equally furious. "You've been using Catherine to cover your crimes, and I won't let you drag her down with you." Robert's voice dropped, then cold and menacing. "What are you going to do, Liam? Run to the police? They'll laugh you out of the station. You're nothing but a spoiled boy who doesn't know his place. Maybe not." Liam said, his voice steady, now chillingly calm. "But I know enough to ruin you." The room fell silent. I held my breath, terrified of what would happen next. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice unnervingly calm. "If you want to ruin me, go ahead. But know this, I'll take Catherine down with me. Everything she's worked for, everything she's built. It'll all be gone. Do you really want that on your conscience?" I stepped into the room before Liam could respond, my voice shaking violently. "Stop it. Both of you." They turned to me, their faces contorted with anger. "This has gone too far," I said, my chest tightening with fear and desperation. "Robert, if you care about me at all, you'll stop this. Let it go." Robert laughed bitterly, a harsh grating sound. "Care about you? Don't kid yourself, Catherine. You're just another pawn in this game." Liam moved toward him. His fists clenched, his body taut with fury, but I stepped between them. "Enough," I cried out. "I won't let you destroy each other." Robert sneered, his eyes cold. You think you can stop this? It's already too late. Later that evening, Liam and I made a decision. We have to leave. He said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. There's no other way. I nodded, my heart heavy with a mixture of fear and grim resolve. But what about Robert? I asked. Hell come after us. Let him. Liam said, his gaze intense. Well, disappear. He won't be able to touch us. We packed quickly, grabbing only essentials. But as we were about to slip out the back door, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway froze us in our tracks. Robert stepped out, his face twisted with rage, his eyes scanning the house until they landed on us near the door. He marched toward us, radiating your fury. Going somewhere? He asked, his voice cold and lethal. Let us go, Robert, I said, my voice trembling. He shook his head, his laughter bitter and mocking. You think you can just walk away from this? From me? Liam stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of me, his posture tense. We're done, Robert, you've lost. Have I? Robert said, his gaze shifting to me full of contempt. You think he can protect you, Catherine? He's a boy playing at being a man. He'll abandon you the second things get tough. That's enough? Liam said, his voice steady, unwavering. Robert sneered, stepping closer. You're nothing, Liam, and shall see that soon enough. Before Robert could say anything more, Liam grabbed my hand, pulling me firmly toward the car, parked further down the driveway. We're leaving, he said, not looking back. Robert didn't physically stop us. He just stood there, watching us go, his expression dark and strangely triumphant, as if he'd already won some twisted game. We drove for hours, the silence between us thick with unspoken fears. I couldn't shake the feeling that Robert wasn't finished, that he'd find a way to drag us back into his web. As we pulled into a quiet motel on the outskirts of a small anonymous town, Liam turned to me, his expression serious in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. Well, figure this out, he said softly, squeezing my hand. I nodded through the weight of everything we'd left behind, everything we'd risked pressed heavily on my chest. In that moment, I knew we weren't free. Not really. Robert's threat, his influence, still lingered like a shadow over everything we might try to build. But as Liam pulled me into his arms that night, whispering promises of a future where we could finally be safe, finally be happy, I let myself believe, if only for a moment, that we might somehow escape the past. The quiet hum of the motel's cheap air conditioner was the only sound filling the room. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling floral wallpaper, while Liam stood by the window, peeking through the blinds every few minutes like he expected Robert to materialize outside at any second. We can't stay here forever, I said, finally breaking the silence. I know, Liam replied, his voice tight. He'd been calm during the long drive, resolute even. But now I could see the cracks appearing, the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched every time he glanced outside. It was only a matter of time before the weight of everything we'd done caught up with him. We need a plan. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Liam turned Ned to face me, his expression hardened. The plan is to keep moving. Stay ahead of him. You think Robert is just going to let this go? I asked, standing to face him. You heard what he said? Hell come after us. Liam replied, his voice rough. Let him. Liam, I said, tears blurring my vision. We can't live like this. On the run. Forever. We don't have a choice, Catherine. He said, his voice breaking just slightly. We can't stop. The breaking point came 3 days later. We were on the road heading west towards a town Liam said was small enough to disappear in when we noticed the car. It had been following us for miles, staying just far enough back to avoid immediate suspicion, but neither of us could ignore the cold, nagging sense that we were being watched. It's him, Liam said, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. Are you sure? I asked, my voice trembling. Liam didn't answer. Instead, He took the next exit, weaving through a maze of side streets, trying to lose our tail. But the car stayed with us, its headlights glaring in the rearview mirror, a persistent, menacing eye. "Hold on," Liam said, his voice tense as he made a sharp turn onto a dark, unpaved road. The car behind us hesitated for only a second before following its tires, kicking up a cloud of dust as it closed the distance. "Liam, what are you doing?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "I'm ending this," he said, his voice steady, chilling. He brought the car to a sudden jarring stop, throwing it into park before stepping out. "Stay here," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. I watched my heart in my throat as he walked back towards the other car. His shoulders were squared, his fists clenched at his sides. The driver's door opened and Robert stepped out, his face a mask of cold fury in the headlights. "You've got some nerve," Robert said, his voice low and lethal. "This ends now." Robert said nothing more. He just stepped closer, his posture firm, unyielding. "This ends now," he repeated. Robert laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that echoed in the quiet night. "You think you can threaten me? You have no idea who you're dealing with, boy." "I'm not afraid of you," Liam said, stepping closer still. "You should be," Robert said, and my breath caught in my throat as he reached inside his coat and pulled out a gun. I scrambled out of the car, my legs unsteady, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. "Robert, stop," I cried, my voice shaking. He turned to me, his eyes narrowed, blazing with resentment. "This is your fault, Catherine. You made this mess. Put the gun down," I pleaded, my voice trembling uncontrollably. "Why should I?" he asked, his tone mocking, cruel. "You've already destroyed everything. Why not finish the job?" Liam lunged at him, then grabbed an G for the gun. A shot rang out, deafening in the sudden silence, echoing strangely through the empty rural road. For a moment, everything went still. Robert staggered back, clutching his side, a dark stain spreading rapidly across his shirt. Liam stood frozen, the gun now in his hands, his face pale and shocked in the headlights. I ran to Robert, my hands shaking as I tried to press against the wound to stop the bleeding. "Why?" he whispered, his voice weak, his eyes fixed on Liam. "Why him?" I couldn't answer. Liam dropped the gun onto the gravel road, his chest heaving as he stared down at Robert. "Hell, love," he said finally, his voice hollow, flat. We have to go."